By now, you know that planting is one of my favorite things to do. And for the past 3 weeks or so, we have been having rain nonstop. Please don't be fooled by the sun. It like literally just came up in the past 5 minutes. And last night it was raining like you wouldn't believe. The challenge around that is that you get to have a lot of weeds coming up at the same time. And if you have a patch that is a little bit big, it becomes a challenge. Let me just stand here and show you. As you can see at the back, like literally almost all of my patches have weeds on them. But I think I might have come up with a solution. I think, please don't quote me on that. Let's just see how it works, and hopefully, going forward, it's what I would do to try and mitigate this hideousness of having weeds everywhere. Stick around. Previously, I have used mulch. This is mulch, and mulch is amazing. It's really amazing, especially if you want to retain moisture for your plants. But then, however, too much of mulch becomes a breathing colony for insects and hochais. So, ideally, this is quite nice if you're having it on your pot plants and smaller patches. But then, if you are like me, you plant most of your plants on the ground, it becomes a little bit of a challenge because, like I said, it retains heat, and heat becomes the perfect breathing environment for snails. And that's what actually happened to me quite a few years back when I actually had mulch on my patches. I ended up infesting the patches with so much snails that they were just sliming all over my plants and actually um, destroying some of my plants. So for me, mulch is more of something that I use when I just want to retain some moisture and heat, especially on my pot plants and smaller patches. So let me show you what I actually did in order to mitigate having a lot of weeds on the garden. As you can see, I used this bean and peas patch to conduct my experiment. And what happened was I took this side of the patch where I actually had, or I have peas. Only about 4 really made it, the rest didn't. And I did the experiment here, and I actually weeded just this part, and I left the other part. As you can see, I've just left it, and it has overgrown to this size. And it has been almost 3 weeks. This side is without weeds, or well, let's just say maybe this one too. So, and they're very tiny. And since I actually did this, it has like literally been like this. The ones on this side keeps growing because I didn't touch this side. But then where I actually put the experiment, as you can see, I like literally didn't have to do anything. So I am going to continue what I did on the other half, and I'm going to show you what I did, and hopefully going forward that's what I'll be doing with all of the patches to actually save me time when it comes to weeding. Let me show you what I did. Firstly, you would want to actually just make sure that you pick and clear out as much as you can of the weeds that are on your patch. And the idea for that is so that even if weeds grow, they grow in a space that is already cleaned. But then, because you would have cleaned the space first, it actually takes a little longer for the weeds to come. And if they are suppressed underneath, then it would be very easy for you to actually continue with your planting. All right. Now that your weeds are nicely cleaned, you want to just wake up the top of the soil, the soil that is on top. Just be careful and be very mindful of the roots to your plants. If the plants that you have in the space are plants that have roots that are on the surface, you just need to make sure that you at least work around the roots instead of actually ending up damaging the roots altogether. And once that is done, this is where the magic comes in. Take newspapers, take cardboards. Just make sure that it's not your hard cardboards that would actually constrict all the growth altogether. What I did was I actually used newspapers, and as you would have seen previously when I was actually showing you this patch before I actually started all of this, I did mention that I cleaned the first portion, and it has been just 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks, and I have seen like literally small to no weeds whatsoever, and it has been raining almost every day. So what you do is you just layer down your newspaper, and if you already have plants, like in this case now, just make sure that you just maneuver around the stems of your plants so that you don't inhibit the growth that is there, and you just nicely put your newspapers on the ground whilst making sure that the soil that is on top, the one that you just moved and woken up, you can actually just use that soil to put on top of the newspapers. And the reason why is so that at least you make sure that the newspapers don't move and they are just nicely stationed in one place. And you just do that and make sure that you pack the newspapers nicely so that at least they layer on top of each other, so that you minimize the spaces that the weeds might want to crop out of. And as soon as that is nicely done and your soil is nicely put on top of the newspaper, what you want to do now is you want to drench the space with water to just solidify where the newspaper is sitting. Drench the space and let the newspaper soak up the water so that it actually gets stationed where you have put it, and you can add more soil or compost. In my instant, I actually add compost. I find that when you actually use your garden soil, it tends to have traces of the seeds for the weeds, so it would actually just be a space for weeds to grow again quite fast. But then when you use compost, it takes a little bit longer, so you'd want to layer the top part of this whole thing with your compost nicely, as I am doing here. And once all of that is done and everything is in place, you can continue with putting down your plants, as I'm doing here. Remember, I did actually mention in my previous video last week where I mentioned that almost all of my plants didn't make it because of the rain, but then I've actually started another batch in the lab. So this is from the batch that is from the lab. So what I'm just doing here basically is just pricking, and because the newspaper is now nice and moist, you are able to just prick nicely a hole, and you put in your new plants, and you just continue the normal way as you would put your plants down on the ground. So as you can see, I am actually supplementing the peas that I have already planted in the lab. I'm just taking them out to be part of this vegetation here. And with the beans as well, they have really taken on very well, and I'm just going to nicely layer them as well here so that we allow for these guys to nice and grow. I will take a snapshot of the space in possibly about 2 days time to show you guys that really it takes much longer when you do it like this. It takes much longer for the weeds to actually encroach on the space. So that's what I am going to be doing for the rest of my patches. Where I have not planted at all, I would be clearing the weeds, putting down this newspaper in this way, and then start to put down the crops that are already brewing in the lab. Let me know if there is any other tips that you might actually, or that you would like for me to know that I can use, cause child, there is no other way than to work through these weeds. And we all know, if you work in the garden, weeds are the one thing that really takes up a lot of your time if they are not nipped at the butt. So if you have any other ways that I can use in order for me to reduce all of the weeds that I have in the space, by all means, please do let me know in the comments. And 2 days later, as you can see, the peas are still going strong and they are taking on very nice to the space, and the beans as well. If you can see, they seem to be climatizing to the space very nice. However, this is what I want to bring your attention to. As you can see here, there is a lot of holes that are poked by the Hadidas, looking for worms, of course, and seeds. So because like this time around I didn't put the seeds on the ground and I started with the seedlings, at least the seedlings stand some chance. So look at that, like literally there is poking and poking, looking for worms. Okay, I see we have one tiny weed here and another one here, but so far those are the two that I just took out, and the space still looks pretty amazing. Okay, let's just close off these holes and close off this video as well. See, this is our newspaper that's coming to the surface, but most of the ground is really nicely covered. Oh my goodness, look at how this is here. Let's just close it off and give this guy some chance. There we are. There we are. This is our weed control system. Let's see how it fares. All right, bye.